Hey friends, here is a how-to video helping you complete this assignment on rounding decimals practice. Now, when you do this assignment on your computer, you're going to be working in Google Slides. So where you see the place for your name and the date, you would just click on this text area and type in your name and the date. That's easy enough. Okay, now I want to show you how to go about solving each one of these problems, and I'm going to kind of tear away each problem so that we can focus on just one thing at a time. Okay, so let's look at these four problems. And before I show you how to read and answer them, I just want to point out that when you solve these on Google Slides, you're going to type your answers in each of these spots here, and then these red circles, you need to click and drag them to select your answer to the question about rounding. So this question here where it says, what is that decimal rounded to the nearest tenth? You would click and drag one of these red circles to circle either 1/10 or 2/10, depending on what the right answer was. And you're using these little red circles to drag, click them and drag them to your answer. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this first problem. It says, what decimal is shown? Now, each of these groups of 10 represents a decimal amount. So our square here, let me get my pointer. This is our square, and this represents one whole. And it's been divided into 100 equal pieces. So this group of 10 here that I can kind of tear away and just focus on that, this represents 10 out of 100 or 1/10. 10 out of 100 or 1/10. And then in addition to that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hundredths. So that means that my total decimal amount is 1/10 plus 7 hundredths or 17 hundredths. And then they want to know, what is 17 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth? The way I've been showing you this is on a number line, but I kind of like this area model way of looking at it because you can kind of see that you would either be rounding down to 1/10, which is shown here, or you would be rounding up to 2/10. So on the number line, it would look like this. Here's 2/10, and here's 1/10. Now, if I round down to 1/10, it means I'm going to essentially get rid of this group of 7 hundredths, and that won't be there anymore. And if I round up to 2/10, I would shade in the rest of this tenth here, shade in these last 3 hundredths to get me to 2/10. So which is it closer to already? Is it closer to 1/10 or is it closer to 2/10? It's closer to 2/10 because you can see you only need to add 1, 2, 3 hundredths to get to 2/10. Whereas if you subtract, you'd have to subtract 7 hundredths to get down to 1/10. So your midpoint here is going to be 15 hundredths, and then 17 hundredths is right here on the number line, 18, 19, and 20. So remember, on your Google Slides, there's that red circle shape, and you're going to drag that over to 2/10 and circle the 2/10 with that action. For this next one, we're going to figure out what decimal is shown by looking at our area model. This is our area model here. And then we're going to round the decimal shown in the area model to either 4/10 or 5/10. So let's begin by looking at how many tenths we have in our area model. So I'm going to clip these away so that we can see them. All right, let me count. I see 4/10 here, or 40 out of 100. They are the same. They have the same value. And then 2 little tenths tacked on to the end, or 2 little hundredths, I'm sorry. And I can tear those away so you can see them. Here they are. So 4/10 plus 2 hundredths gives me 42 hundredths. And now I'm going to round 42 hundredths to either 4/10 or 5/10. My midpoint is going to be 45 hundredths. To show you the midpoint, I can highlight 1, 2, 3 more hundredths here. That would get me to 45 hundredths. And so you have to ask yourself, is it closer? Is it closer to round all the way up to 5/10, or is it closer to just knock off these 2 hundredths here? And of course the answer is it's closer to cross off those 2 hundredths, so we're going to round down to 4/10. The 4/10 is the closest tenth. Next we're going to look at our area model and figure out how many tenths and how many hundredths we have. So I can tear away my tenths and look at those separately. And I can count one group of 10. So that's my tenth, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, or 70 hundredths. They have the same value. Plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. And notice it's really important to put your digit in the right place value position. 5 hundredths has a really different meaning from 5/10, so you have to make sure that you put your 5 in the hundredths place. That gives us 75 hundredths. So now we're either going to round down to 7/10, or we're going to round up to 8/10. And the midpoint right in the middle is, of course, 75 hundredths. So to get to the midpoint, actually I'm already at my midpoint, right? I'm at 75 hundredths. So that's already there. So I can show where I'm at on my number line. I'm right here, 75 hundredths. Now the rule is 5 or more go up a floor. So since I am exactly in between 7/10 and 8/10, the rule is always round up. All right, so now we're on problem number 4. We're going to look at our area model. And our area model shows one whole square that's been divided into 100 equal pieces. And we're going to look at how many tenths we have, which is here, and how many hundredths we have, which is here. Okay, so let's count up our tenths. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, or 50 hundredths. They have the same value. And 1, 2, 3, 4 hundredths. Being very careful to put my 4 in the correct place value position. So that gives me 54 hundredths. Now remember, the rule is 4 or less, let it rest. So we're basically understanding that we're closer at 54 hundredths, we're closer to 5/10 by just removing these 4 hundredths than we are to add 6 more hundredths to get up to 6/10. So we're closer, the closest tenth is 5/10 for that one. Now remember, for these problems, when you are solving them, you are not going to be circling with a pen tool. You're on Google. Okay, now for the next few problems, there's 4 more problems here. I'm going to let you do these on your own. I'm not going to make a video showing you how to solve these specifically because I want to see how you do them. Just make sure that for each one you fill in what decimal is shown by typing it in the box, and then pull these red circles onto your answer choice for how to round them. And then the last slide is a couple more practice problems for you to do. And now for these ones, we're going to be rounding to the nearest hundredth, not the nearest tenth, so it's a little bit different. When I look at this area model here, I can see that I have tenths, hundredths, and thousandths represented. And do you see these lines that are going from my hundredth here to this larger model of the hundredth? That is because this would be so tiny if they tried to show how many thousandths were shaded in here, so they just made it bigger for you here. So to figure out what decimal amount is represented here, we have to look at tenths and hundredths and thousandths and put them together. So I can count 1, 2, 3 tenths plus 3 hundredths plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 thousandths, for a total of 338 thousandths. Now they want us to take that and round it to the nearest hundredth. So in order to do that, we're going to look at our thousandths and ask ourselves, would it be easier to cross out our 8 thousandths here? That would round us down to 33 hundredths. I have to go back to the number line because this is just how my brain understands it best. So let's see. 335 is the midpoint. 36, 37, 38. Okay, so here we are at 338 thousandths. We could cross out 8 of those thousandths to get down to this point, 333 tongue twister, 33 hundredths. Or we could add 2 little itty bitty thousandths to get up to, that would round us up to 34 hundredths. So which is this closer to? Is it closer to here or is it closer to here? It is closer to 34 hundredths. So the other way to do that is look at your thousandths digit, which is an 8, 5 or more, go up a floor. That confirms for us that we do need to round up. All right, let's look at our next one. Remember, for these models, we have tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, which are these little itty bitty blue guys. And it's super important to put your digits in the right place because otherwise you'll end up with the wrong number. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 tenths plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths plus 2 thousandths for a total of 862 thousandths. And we're going to round that either up or down to the nearest hundredth. So we're going to use the digit in the thousandths place to help us do that. 4 or less, let it rest. So we're going to round down. We're going to let it rest at 86 hundredths. In another way of saying it, it's easier, we're closer to just get rid of these 2 thousandths than it is to add 8 more thousandths to get up to the next hundredth. We'd have to add 8 more thousandths to get up to 87 hundredths, and we don't want to do that. Okay, one more. Here we have not quite a whole tenth. So our first digit is actually going to be a 0 in the ones place and a 0 in the tenths place. And then I see I've got 9 hundredths. Let me grab those. So no tenths, 9 hundredths, and how many thousandths do I have here? It's kind of hard to count when they're so tiny. Looks like it's 5. Let me see. Ooh, I can make them bigger. Yes. There we go. Much easier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, okay. 5 thousandths. So that gives us a total of 95 thousandths. And they want to know, is that closer to 9 hundredths? Meaning, is it easier to just add 1 more hundredth? Or would it be easier to, oh yeah, so rounding up, we would add 1 hundredth to get to 1/10, and rounding down, we would just leave it alone and stay at 9 hundredths. So since we only need, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Whoopsies, Miss Lynn made a boo-boo. Okay, I need to be looking over here at my thousandths. Sorry. Okay, so is it closer or easier to add 5 more thousandths or remove 5 thousandths? Now, this digit is that magic digit. 5 or more go up a floor. We are exactly at the midpoint between 9 hundredths and 1/10, so therefore we're going to round up to 1/10. And then for this last problem, which is here, I'm going to let you do it on your own because I kind of want to see what you understand and what you still need to work on, so I'm not going to say anything about this one. You guys finish that one on your own. Let me know if you need help with anything.